I'm Craig Beaumont-Flynn. Welcome to Beyond the Design, a show that gives you a peek behind the curtain of the design industry and shares the stories of those that are the driving force behind it. Well, welcome to Beyond the Design. I'm your host, Craig Beaumont-Flynn, and today we have with us Alexander Dornbracht with Kallista. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Craig, for having me. Excited to have a chat today.
Absolutely. Well, let's just dive right into it, and you can share your journey to becoming the managing director of Kallista and how your background has influenced your leadership style.
Yeah, let me maybe take a couple steps back and address the elephant in the room with my
Sure.
last name and Kallista in conjunction. So I'm part of the Dornbracht family. My great grandfather, my grandfather, and my father have been in the industry for 70 plus years. Started our family business out of Germany. So I kind of grew up in the industry, which was very fun for me to see. I didn't really join the industry until 6 years ago. I grew up in Germany natively, moved to the United States at a very young age, 22, but have not worked in the industry actually for the first decade, 12 years of my career. Had various jobs in California. I got my grad degree out of University of San Diego, and ultimately decided to join our family business in 2017. Moved my life to Atlanta, Dornbracht HQ for North America. Has always been in Atlanta since the late 80s when we opened that office down here. So I ran the North America business for about 3 years, which was a fantastic experience. Great to finally be joining the industry, right? It took me some time to really find that passion and that drive that I wanted to be in the industry. But fast forward into 2020, the family decided to sell the business. Right? So my father and my uncle decided to make that move. And as you can imagine, that threw kind of a curveball into my life that I had to, right? Like you're starting to really align yourself for the next 20, 30 years of what your mission is going to be in life and what you're going to build and inherit also, right? One of the greatest brands in the industry that's been built. So took me some time to recalibrate and really understand what's next. I was 34 at the time. And I started creating a list, and what was really important to me was interior design and luxury. Those are the two things that came back to my list as I started looking what's next for me in my life. And I've always looked at the Kallista brand very fondly from the outside. Right, there's competitors obviously in the industry and in the space where you could never think of working for, but Kallista always had such a positive inspiration on me as I started learning the industry and specifically the American brands that are strong in our local markets here. As well as obviously Kallista being owned by the Kohler company, the Kohler family, privately owned business still. Today we have over 40,000 associates globally, but still fully privately owned. Obviously, very much aligned with my personal values, my personal ethics of working for a family business has long-term aspirations, long-term goals. So I ultimately reached out to the Kohler team, to the Kohler family. We've had conversations, a very quick and exciting interview process. Also got to talk to Mr. Kohler, who passed away in 2022. He was the one that purchased Kallista in the late 80s. Very much one of his babies, right? It's part of the Kohler Co. House of Brands. And ultimately, we decided that this would be an exciting opportunity for me to join and take over this precious brand that Kohler's owned for more than 30 years and hopefully bring a new perspective, new ideas to the table, right? From a maybe more of a European perspective, very similar to how Kallista was founded, right? Kallista was founded by European immigrants out of San Francisco. Two British entrepreneurs, and very much from the founding principles, they always try to do things a little bit differently than what the industry has been doing. Right? If you take a step back for 20, 30 years, Kallista is one of the first companies and brands that really took the world as its playground in terms of curating different materials, working with small manufacturers across the globe, of bringing customized upgrades to a collection. In the 90s, they were very far ahead of what brands are just now starting to do today, where personalization, customization comes to the forefront. That's been one of our core competencies for over 3 decades at this point. So decided to ultimately join. It was April 2021. Been on board now for a little bit over 3 years. It's been a fantastic journey, and couldn't be happier, I have to say.
Well,
right? If
that's
you
good.
think about a big move in my life and what happened, and I think being here 3 years later, I literally couldn't be happier. It's a fantastic opportunity to get a chance to take a brand like that, make it your own baby, and hopefully be at the helm of it and have ownership of it for a very long time to come.
Absolutely. Well, being involved in a family business, how did your upbringing in the kitchen and bath industry shape your perspective on design and luxury goods, especially something that you didn't think you were going to get involved in and now you're involved in?
Yeah, so you obviously have passive influence, and I call it the dinner table conversations, right? As your father comes home from the factory and you sit at a dinner table at a very young age, you just get influenced by that. You hear the conversations that are happening about employees, about products coming to market, design discussions, right? About what drives the ethos of the brand. So you're very much I don't want to say indoctrinated, but you have this very strong influence in your life very early on as a young kid. And how that shaped me is I think that dedication that I saw my father had towards leading with design and specifically leading with unique designs. So don't ever look back. Don't ever try to copy someone else. Like you always have to be at the forefront of creating something new,
Right.
something unique, something special, because that's the only way an industry can evolve, right? If you have multiple entrepreneurs that think like that versus trying to check a box and trying to do the basics. And that has kind of taught me about, I think, the importance of design leadership, the importance of committing yourself to innovation, the importance of pushing design boundaries. I think trying new things, bringing evolution in the bathroom space. If I think about, I was probably just 8 years old when the first design faucet from Dornbracht came into the bathroom. And now faucets went beyond just delivering water for cleaning purposes. They now went to design statements.
They're
That
pieces of artwork.
exactly that
Sometimes.
hasn't been 40, 50 years old. That's really just only in the 80s and 90s where it started and took off. So I think that that shaped my passion for luxury early on. Brands overall across many different industries are really out there leading with design, while you have a majority of other companies then we're really jumping on the bandwagon and looking what good design looks like and trying to copy that, trying to keep up with that. But that ultimate commitment to never look back and never look at what the competition is doing, but drive your own vision and find your own purpose and your own creation of moving forward, right? Really about that entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
So that is something that awoken in me early on. It took me some time to find that myself. I'm glad that I took a little bit longer to ultimately join the industry and had various different experiences. Because I wasn't there early on in my early 20s. That would have been too soon for me to join that business. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't really thinking about that level of responsibility yet. But yeah, I guess everything happens in life for a reason, right? And you kind of go your separate pathways and ultimately end up where you need to be.
It's all about timing. Well, with key lessons learned, how have you learned those and about leading a successful organization, especially with an organization within the industry that's ever evolving and ever changing? And how do you stay on the forefront of design and being a brand leader?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question, how do we lead an organization in the industry? I think it's all about the right culture at the end of the day, right? And your brand is very much a reflection of your culture that really consists of your people, your product, and the environment that these two variables function in. And to me, that culture has to be that dedication towards luxury, towards design, towards innovation, that has to go through the entire organization. If you only drive that from the top, or if only maybe your product department drives that, I don't believe you can be ultimately successful in our industry, not in the lux space. It has to be like a mentality and a commitment that goes through every employee in the entire organization. And that's where communication and really providing a transparent vision is so important, that everybody can feel and they're on the same page. We're all thriving for the exact same thing and have that long-term commitment, that long-term vision of what we're trying to accomplish every day we show up to work. And Second portion of your question, I think when it comes to design leadership and how the future there looks like, and specifically for us, it's about, I think, tying design ultimately to your brand core competencies. So we see a lot of companies and across various different product categories and industries that all have beautiful products in some shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it becomes special when your core competencies of the brand are almost fully reflected of how your product looks like, so that each product has a dedicated story to tell that ties back and kind of completely fulfilling your brand journey. So that's what we worked on the most for the last 3.5 years, is almost revisiting the last 40 years of Kallista, right? Putting that to paper, and now working and looking at like, how does that evolution now for the next 40, 50 years look like? And how do we keep the core competencies in place and then build on top of that? And that ultimately has to be reflected in your product portfolio for the long run.
Right. Well, how do you balance the creative and innovative aspects of running a luxury brand?
So I try to get very, very close to the markets, meaning I try to spend a lot of time in territory. And the beauty about North America is that we are a continent, we're not a country. And I say that because your design influence and inspiration and exposure in New York is so different than Miami, is so different than LA, so different than Vancouver. So you have all these different influences coming together in one country, but it's so rich. And those experiences going to market, working and talking with designers, working with the local showrooms, right? That all have a little bit of a different take on what good looks like, what design is required in that market. That helps you broaden your perspective and understand that I can't have a collection that just works in New York. I can't have a collection that just works in Los Angeles. I need to be able to fulfill the market needs, right? With the 80-20 rule. And that is very challenging in the United States, but also very fascinating and I think a great opportunity and challenge to take on. And my second piece to that is that I try to stay obviously very close to all the publications, the industry, competitors, even, right? Adjacent brands, whether that's lighting, whether that's kitchen manufacturers, obviously strong coming out of Germany, appliance manufacturers. Like to me, Instagram, we have it so easy nowadays, getting close to the markets, getting that inspiration. Exactly. Staying close to all of that. I think that's so important. Like you have to have a 360-degree view on what's happening, because you need to know where everything is at today in order to drive innovative topics, right? You need to know what are some of the gaps we have, and where do we see our brand find new and innovative ways to continue to evolve the industry.
You talked about company culture. What is your personal strategy in cultivating a strong company culture at Kallista?
I think to me, and one of the environments that I always thrived on in my career has always been that teamwork makes the dream work. I think you're always stronger as a team. Specifically, you put a lot of smart people on one table, you're a lot stronger and you come out with a lot of better ideas, strategies, and visions than if you do that by yourself and running it top down. So I very much believe in the bottom up approach. And I think giving every associate a voice, whether that's positive or negative feedback. We actually drive that across Kohler company, I think, very well, the way we engage our associates through surveys, interactions, for giving people to do skip level conversations, right? Move up the hierarchy and have conversations with maybe VP or C levels in the organization that sit a lot higher in the organization than them. And so to me, that is very much, I think, an important aspect of giving people the feeling that they're truly part of the conversation and that their work matters. And I've experienced both good and bad in my career, and I'm grateful for both, because I think it helps you understand how you don't want to feel, and then that I think makes you a better leader ultimately long term. True. And to me, one of the things I experienced in my career was it didn't feel very good when you felt like your work didn't matter that much, or you felt like you didn't have a seat at the table. So I try to do very much the opposite and make sure that everybody knows their work is valued, right? Like specifically in a small business, you can imagine if one person doesn't show up, then the wheel stops. There's nobody else that can jump in. And that's what I love about small and medium-sized businesses. And I think the talent we have attracted today and other people working at Kallista specifically, they very much thrive in that environment, right? They show up to work knowing their work matters, and we're fully aligned on the mission that we're on, which is great to see.
Tell us a little bit about the process of developing a new product at Kallista from concept to market.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, brassware specifically does take a very long time. I think from an idea till you actually might see it specified in a house and installed in a house can be anywhere between 3.5 to 5 years.
Right.
It's a very long cycle. So the process really starts with us, and that's one of the things we, I think, really perfected in the last 3 years is like we actually don't talk about design. We talk about a love story of what that product is supposed to achieve. And that love story has to be tied to our brand pillars and to our core competencies. That's one of the things we changed really over the last 3 years. And design is really just an outcome. It's a layer that latches on to whatever that love story is supposed to accomplish. To me, it really changed the game for us because these products have such a deep and rich experience and purpose now beyond just being good looking. And there's a reason what we're trying to accomplish. It might be that we want to push innovation to the market. It might be that we want to drive a new topic for the Kallista brand. So we've been investing heavily in a lot of product marketing talent that can help us craft these stories, right? We're across the entire global industry, understanding where a product might fit and what our purpose is. And then we move on to the next stage where we engage with our design team, talented designers in-house that we have, as well as a couple of outside industrial design firms that we work with. Workshop APD out of New York, for example, the Ramza team out of New York, Laura Carrar, who has done a fantastic job shaping the Kallista brand the last 20 years. And then Love Story, when Love Story meets design vision, you ultimately get to a concept, right? And once that concept goes through its certain approval stages, we then hit a very long and very complex NPD, new product development process of getting a brassware idea all the way to market, usually over the time span of 2 to 3 years. So as you can imagine, fascinating process, quite complicated products, because once you engage with water, with valving technology, the quality has to be at a very, very high standard. Right? It can't just break in a home. That would be catastrophic, specifically on the luxury side. And if you think about quality long term, our products have to look good 20 years from now. They still have to function the same way. One of the beauties about, and I really started to value that a lot, of Kallista being part of Kohler company, we use the same production process. We use the same highly qualitative platforms. And that's what I think makes us quite unique. Kohler is installed in millions of homes all over the globe. Right. Their valves are some of the best the world has ever seen, with up to quality standards up to 1 million cycles that you and I in our lifetime will never have 1 million showers, right? Right. And the fact that we can use those platforms and put our design vision on top of it, I think makes us quite powerful, quite unique in the industry. And yeah, overall that process, like I said, is really it tests your patience. Because as you can imagine, from the time you have an idea, you see a gap, you have to have the patience to stay on that pathway and execute it, bring it to market. And usually in NPD processes, you encounter challenges, engineering challenges, right? That you might not get that 2 millimeters, and you might have to give a little on the design side to make the engineering work at the end of the day. So patience, I would say, is what it has taught me the most.
Well, what are some of the current trends in the luxury bathroom and kitchen space that you find most exciting?
I think the one I'm most excited about is personalization. I think Kallista, as well as any other manufacturer in our space, is tasked with figuring out, moving from a design that we produce a couple thousand times on an assembly line in a factory towards unique creations, one of one, is going to be the challenge for the next decade. And we've done a really good job, I think, tackling that topic already and working through some exciting new products that way. But as you can imagine, one-off creations are very, very complex. And specifically, if you talk about plumbing and brassware, the quality has to be there. And factories today are not designed to do one-off creations.
Right.
The economies of scale don't work that way. So I think that's probably one of the most challenging pieces our industry is going to face, but it's one of the most exciting ones to work on as well, because we can start bringing in personalized stories to our clients and to the designer. And we're looking at it in multiple different ways. I think we're going to find a sweet spot somewhere in between where we allow a certain level of customization while ensuring that quality and after sales and certain economies of scale stay present for the overall process. And the second big trend we're seeing is, I think, designers want to be playful again. We're seeing a return of color. Not just Kallista, we see on the Kohler level as well. They brought a lot of the heritage colors back from the 70s and 80s,
Right.
which is exciting to see. And color is a very fun way, I think, to personalize a bathroom, a kitchen, a powder room, a guest bathroom. But we also have to figure out, how do you do color without being maybe tired of it after having maybe a strong pink or a strong yellow in your bathroom after a year. So we're trying to figure out, I think, cool, smaller personalization plays to give designers the option to play with color, but do it in a little bit more subtle way so it has longevity.
Makes sense. Well, you mentioned that Kallista is known for its luxury brassware, which is significant. How do you ensure that the brand continues to innovate while maintaining its heritage and quality?
Yeah, good question. So we're proud to say that we have produced most of our lines and continue to produce most of our lines out of real brass. Sometimes we have to use zinc in order to achieve a certain geometric form where brass is going to hit its limitations. But brass ultimately is one of the most sustainable materials as well, because you don't have to change it every 5 or 10 years. It's going to look good in 30 or 40 years.
True. Yeah.
And ultimately, we need to hold a very high standard towards the quality of how the handle feels in your hand, how it turns, how the finish is going to look like over a long time. Right? Our PVD processes, they go through some of the most rigorous testing capabilities with lifetime warranty to make sure they're going to look good decades from now. And I think that's very much where I think sometimes even luxury brands I've engaged with on a personal level, sometimes they fall short. Like, you pay a certain price point, you engage with a certain brand. I'm a big believer that quality has to stay at the forefront. The product has to work. The product has to look good a long time from now. Right? That to me is one of the core competencies. So we take that very seriously within our entire supply chain. Our testing capabilities. The beauty about Kallista is we are also tied into Kohler in Wisconsin and into their testing facilities. So we go through the same rigorous testing capabilities, and this is quite honestly why sometimes your launches take so long. You find stuff during testing, and even if it's just a 3% variation, you got to go back to the drawing board and fix it. And I think that's a commitment that I think makes your brand really successful long term. Right? As long as your quality will always be what the customer expects, what the designer expects, that you don't have issues after a long time, you don't have to deal with certain shortages within your materiality or your supply chain. I think that's a big commitment to, I think, every luxury brand should have.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, everyone goes through little hurdles or bumps in the road, so you want to make sure you smooth those out before you get it out to market. How has interior design and architecture and your interest in it influenced your work at Kallista?
I think you start following some of those large and more prominent designers on Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and all their social media tools, right? I think you start to see really what good looks like. There's a lot of design out there, but I think there's specifically a couple of firms, a couple of leaders out there that do such a phenomenal job of creating these very unique spaces and pushing boundaries. And to me, that goes beyond just marketing, right? The biggest Instagram account does not always have to be the best work that's put out.
True.
To me, there's architects and designers that might only have a small following on social media, but in the industry, they're very well known to be the absolute top tier and pushing us all to be better. So I'd say over the last 6-7 years that has influenced me the most, I think, is just absorbing work from some of the top A&D firms out there,
Mm-hmm.
getting more familiar with it, and then seeing homes in person. Right? The beauty about when we go into a market and we have an opportunity to see a client on site is to see some of those creations and really see and touch and feel what a difference, right? That specific marble maybe from the south of Spain makes
Right.
versus a cookie cutter copy that might be a lot cheaper that you find domestically. And I think that has that's influenced me. It's created a huge passion, right? That commitment for that very specific luxury design aesthetic. And I do think that that'll be here for a very long time to come, right? People always want and continue to want the people that can afford it in the luxury space, something that's special.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something
True.
that's differentiated, something that has that little bit of extra special sauce to it. And that's what I like the most about our industry and specifically the luxury sector, right? The manufacturers and the designers coming together to create something very unique. And it took me some time, obviously, to fully understand all the different variations of design styles, right? Specifically the United States. Growing up in Germany,
Completely
it's
different.
mostly contemporary, as you can
Right.
imagine.
Right.
Minimalistic contemporary, very much a German design language.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, you have everything.
Right.
Everything from very, very traditional to ultra contemporary. If I think about a New York condo or apartment complex, a penthouse in New York, and everything in between, all with different requirements and different design styles. And that makes it a very, very fun market. It does take some time, though, to really get fully comfortable and understand all the different design styles. And then even you look at different taste levels, right? Contemporary New York might
True.
look different than contemporary in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fascinating to me.
Especially the American market can be somewhat fickle, and they tend to follow trends, so they can be all over the place. There's no consistency,
Correct.
What drives your commitment to innovation and evolution within the luxury goods sector?
I think I was shaped on early by my dad with what I mentioned earlier, right? I think an opportunity to lead a luxury brand should not be taken lightly because those opportunities, A, they don't come around very often, and B, it does come with a certain amount of responsibility, right? I think looking at your brand and what your purpose of your brand is and the commitment to the industry to find certain topics that you are driving. It can't just be looking at sales and sales growth, right? There has to be a bigger picture behind it. And that is innovation. And that innovation could look very different. That doesn't have to be technology. That could be sustainability. That could be materiality. That could be design styles. That could be even the 360-degree customer, to how a customer engages with your brand. So to me, it's a very broad area of how you can define innovation. What we're doing today is what I'm really excited about is finding our sweet spot in defining what good luxury American design looks like on a global scale. That's probably one of the most exciting thing Kallista has started launching product towards, is going to continue to work towards over the coming years. I've always been fascinated that a lot of the American design community, right? We're going to Milan, we're looking towards Europe for inspiration. We've imported a lot of European brands to show us how good look like, and be excited about what Italian, Germans, Swiss companies have to offer in terms of quality design. And if you turn that thing around, the Europeans, they're not looking to Milan for inspiration that much. They're looking to New York, they're looking to Chicago, Los Angeles. And what we haven't done yet is actually really exporting American luxury design. Have a commitment towards that, manufacturers and brands driving a specific perspective, but also then exporting that back into Europe, Asia, and really globally of driving specific viewpoints, because we do have a very distinctive design sensibility, but also a very distinctive aesthetic in the United States. And I think a lot more markets across the globe, they're excited learning more about it, and they're certainly open engaging with brands from the US.
Well, how do you stay inspired and motivated in a competitive and constantly evolving industry that changes, if not every 6 months, constantly, especially as you mentioned with Instagram and social media and Pinterest and all the other aspects that are inundated us with, you got to have this now.
Yeah, the input is at an all-time high, right? And I think one thing I had to learn as well, and going through that with my team, is when is it right to take those inputs, and when do you have to tune out the noise? Because trends, they come quickly, but sometimes
Right.
also gone very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, we have to find that line in between for longevity, specifically when it comes to design, and finding that sweet spot of answering to trends, but also making sure that, for example, product creations are going to look good 10 to 20 years from now. We would never produce a product that's just trendy for 3 to 5 years to capture a certain wave that just rolls through the market. If we write inspirations from other luxury brands like Porsche, Louis Vuitton, right? Others that really stay true to their heritage and have an involvement of design over time. Yeah, they might answer certain trends with maybe fun color play or something like that. But if you look at their design, it looked good 40 years ago, and it's still going to look good 40 years from now. There's a very much a consistency to that. So it keeps us on our toes because there's trends that we know consumers want. But I think it's about finding that sweet spot on the trends you're going to answer and how you're going to answer them specifically.
True. Yeah. Got to stay on the forefront, I guess you could say, as well, which your brand does lead the way in a lot of many ways. Well, what are some of the upcoming projects or initiatives at Kallista that you're most excited about?
Yeah, the big push we started doing this year is with a big launch window of new contemporary collections. So Kallista has done a very, very good job and really dominated the traditional and transitional American design aesthetic at the very highest luxury level. One of my dreams and aspirations for the brand is, I think, to bring a new layer of depth to the Kallista brand, and that would be how we do American contemporary design at the very, very best level. That's also globally relevant. So we launched our first collection, 002, this year at KBIS. That's been a great success thus far as we're rolling that out. We showcased a second collection called Guys at Salone in April this year that we're launching in about 2 months in August. So that to me is an evolution of the brand, an expansion of the brand towards really owning and driving conversations in this new contemporary layer. That's been a fascinating journey because the love stories that we talked about with our design team, they weren't like, let's look at what the Europeans are doing. They were geared towards how are we defining what good American contemporary design looks like. So we almost had a blank slate. And I think we are doing a contemporary design a little bit more playful. We're a little bit warmer when it comes to the shapes and the tones and the forms, the materiality that we might use. Most of the contemporary design out there today is very minimalistically focused.
True. Yep.
And we're going in a little bit of a different direction. And obviously, you're going to wait till your product rolls to the market and get the feedback. The first feedback has been very, very positive, but I'm just excited for the next 2 or 3 years, seeing how the design community absorbs that, reacts to that, engages with us, and really, really go on that journey with the brand that makes it also a lot more globally relevant in different markets.
Well, mentioning what's ahead, how do you envision the future of Kallista in the next 5 to 10 years?
Good question. So one of my big dreams and aspirations is that Kallista as an American luxury brand is globally relevant. And globally relevant meaning that you have a strong presence in the Middle East and Asia Pacific, in the UK, as well as in the heart of Europe. And you can imagine Europe is a very, very tough market to break into, specifically for non-European brands. The standard is very high when it comes to quality, when it comes to design. But I think that's a personal goal of mine, right? I think it'd be very exciting to work with an American brand and say you've created something with your team that is relevant in Europe in the design community. So I think that's the big aspiration of the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, grow the business, keep expanding, being relevant in those global markets, and drive different conversations in different markets. Right, the American design aesthetic is very relevant in the UK today already, and not many brands have made their way over there. And there's just so much appetite and playground in the world for brands that might do things a little bit different and bring new inspiration. So I would say globalization of the brand over the next 10 years, but really being at the forefront of design and thought leadership in the industry as well. I think we've seen a lot of brands that are now part of large corporations, most publicly traded, right? We're seeing a lot less smaller family-owned brands. We're in a unique situation. While I don't own Kallista, we're part of the Kohler family, right? So I do think keeping that alive, that ethos of smaller brands, obviously, that are growing, that are expanding, but can always do what's right in the long run over the next 10 to 20 years. Because we don't have to answer necessarily to Wall Street, we don't have to answer to rigorous trends and financial targets every 3 months. We can do what's right for the next 25 to 50 years, right? Kohler is going to do what's right for the next 150 years. They just had the 150th anniversary last year. And I think that's another very exciting piece over the next 10 years, keeping that mindset and ethos alive in the industry.
And being a leader in the industry and still being creative without, like you said, you don't have to answer to Wall Street. You can still provide a product that's quality and craftsmanship, but also design integrity.
Correct. Yeah, you don't want to move away from your core competencies to find scale quickly and to maybe lower the quality a little bit or design language because now you can hit lower price points and scale the business quickly. That is not necessarily our journey. Our journey is to be committed to continue to bring innovation, right? To work closely with the A&D community of providing something unique. And I think over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see a lot less and less companies do that and be committed to that. And we're seeing it already, right? Companies are becoming larger conglomerations. They're being bought out left and right by large organizations. The smaller craftsmen are going away. If I think about companies like P. Guerin in New York that we just did a collaboration with, those are very, very unique today. And who knows if they all exist in 20 to 30 years. One of the exciting things we discussed with our product team was our commitment to artisan partnerships across the globe. We want to be a company that has the relationship with that small garage shop in Italy that maybe does 10 specialty handles for us a year. To give the designer something that's just unique and still created by another human being that's been committed to quality maybe for 50 years, right? Having manufacturers like us that go out there with their purchasing and supply chain teams and find these curated artisans across the globe to still create unique pieces, that will never be scalable. You'll never drive 10,000 units of that, right? So it has to be the smaller companies that keep doing that type of thing.
What legacy do you hope to leave through your work with Kallista and in the luxury goods industry as a whole?
Good question. Thought about that a lot. Obviously, stepping also into a very unique position, right? My father had a journey. My family had a journey with that brand that I never got to go on. Right, 3 years really wasn't enough, which is also one of the reasons I looked to ultimately stay in the industry to find that specific purpose, but also leave a legacy behind. I think that ties back to making Kallista a global powerhouse of a brand and making American design a global powerhouse in terms of perspective, aesthetic, thought leadership. Those probably be the two big points I'm thriving towards. We have the right, I think, product ideas in the backlog to make that happen. We actually have more ideas than we could possibly handle over the next 10 years, which is a good problem to have. But we're pushing so high and so far right now with innovation topics that, I'm hoping to leave certain creations behind that have been unique and try to do something new beyond just bringing good-looking product to the industry.
Speaking about creations, is there a particular creation or design that hits home with you, with Alex?
There is. It's actually been quite of a fun change over the last 3 years. So growing up German in Germany most of my life, right? Only leaving when I was 22. Your design aesthetic is very limited. Actually, it's only focused on really good contemporary, clean, minimalistic design with a European eye on it. So joining Kallista was quite of a fun experience because certain collections I didn't understand when I joined. And I had to develop that eye for it, but also the passion for it. So I would say today, if you would have asked Alex 4 years ago, I would have gone always for the contemporary design. And now I actually have a true passion for traditional and transitional design aesthetic. And one of the most exciting collections we're working on right now is actually redefining what a good American traditional design looks like with a modern twist on it, and put in our spin on that. Because if you look at traditional design, it is a giant sea of vanilla flavors out there.
Right.
And to me, that's one of the things most exciting is like, how do we bring something new to the table? But yeah, I think good transitional design, industrial design. I had a good looking industrial design collection. We have one coming out in February for KBIS next year. That was a new design direction that got me very, very excited to be working on something like that. You don't see that in Europe really at all. It's very much unique, I would say, to the UK and to the American market. So what gets Alex excited, I would say, today is really the entire spectrum of design possibilities that I didn't have an eye or the passion for, I would say, 5 or 10 years ago.
What are you most surprised about of your journey from the start, growing up in the industry, and then taking this path? What are you most surprised about?
I'm most surprised about of really the passion I developed for the industry once I started joining. And I don't know if that's a family dynamic, because usually you do the opposite of what your dad wants you to do or what your dad does. I think there could be very much a family dynamic, right? Which is why I tried to find my own way over the first 10, 12 years of my career path. And it was very surprising though how quickly I found my way and how natural it all felt, and really that passion that came with it. I was passionate in my careers and jobs before, but this industry specifically has just taken it to a completely new level. I don't think of it as a job at all. To me, this is you get compensated to do your passion every day, and that's literally the best out of both worlds. And I actually didn't know that I was going to be that much into it and that passionate about it that you can really see yourself doing that for the rest of your life.
Right. So Essence, oddly enough, it's part of your DNA that's become part of your DNA in a wider spectrum, being a part of this now.
Correct. Yeah. I guess probably destiny, whatever you call it or believe in, probably always had that path somehow figured out, right? I took some zigzag ways to ultimately end up here, and who'd have thought I end up right working at the Kohler company, running the Kallista brand someday. That would have said probably a 1 in 10 million chance. If you would have told me that 10 years ago, but it happened, and that's the funny thing about life, as I'm learning, as you get older, right? You just, these curveballs just keep coming, and it's like, how do you hit them? What are you going to do with them? But like I said, couldn't be happier. This is such a fantastic brand, culture, people you get to work with, and the parent company behind you, right? That's been here 150 years. That's special.
Yeah, that's a unique opportunity.
Right.
What have been some of the most rewarding moments of your career thus far?
Some of my most rewarding moments. I think when you get your first couple of promotions in your career, right? I think stepping up and seeing that your work is being recognized, and that taught me, I think, how important recognition is for people to feel valued at their job, and having that transparent relationships inside a hierarchy in a corporation with your boss or even with your boss's boss. My time at Cengage Learning, I actually spent some time in the education industry for about 2.5 years. It's probably one of my most valuable times, because I had two of the best leaders mentor me. That was my boss and then the general manager of the company I used to work for. So I always look back at that time of like, those 2.5 years, they have shaped me tremendously and helped me significantly get ahead in my career, mature. And what they taught me is flat hierarchies, right? Access to higher level ups in your organization, right? Being able to freely speak your mind, bring good ideas to the table. That was a fascinating experience, and I've taken a lot of those lessons learned into my leadership style of how I'm treating people and what I'm trying to do, and how we're communicating with each other. And yeah, there's multiple different layers, right? You have layers that shape you as well, where you might have had experience that you didn't like, that you didn't appreciate, when you felt unhappy, maybe you felt undervalued. You saw certain opportunities in a company and problems that didn't get solved. So yeah, it's just it's a crazy way of just all these different experiences coming together, and without even thinking about it, it just shapes you.
True.
I sometimes think about it, but it's all at the end of the day natural. How you lead and how you talk to people and manage people in an organization. But I know all these experiences shape you passively.
You mentioned the zigzag road, the path that you've taken, and how those influenced and impacted your leadership style. Is there a personal story or experience that you can really significantly relate to that changed that for you?
Yeah, there is. At Cengage Learning, I remember the GM, the CEO of that company, had a discussion early on with me of he wanted me to step up to the table, bring a lot more to the role than what I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Offered me mentorship, guidance, and my boss at the time, who was reporting to the CEO, he was completely fine and supportive of that, and that blew my mind back in the day. Absolutely blew my mind. Like, what a selfless leader to
Right.
allow right, a younger guy in the company to be able to have those relationships and push and being supported that way. And yeah, that has shaped me of just to think of how today I look at talent in the organization and the opportunity you want to give them and really invest in them. I think, and I think I'm proud to say that Kohler company, we do a very good job at that we invest in our young talent, in our upcoming talent, in the high performing talent,
Mm-hmm.
and are really rigorous about performance management and making sure that these people have a chance to climb the ladder, have a chance to be featured, have a chance to get FaceTime with the VPs and the CEO if needed. I that was one of my most inspiring experiences of just yeah, feeling like you get a seat at the table if you're doing a good job and performing. And I think a lot of companies still today, they're struggling with that. Right? They
Right.
still
Right.
have very hierarchical in corporate America, top down. And I guess also one of the beauties, I think, us being a family business, that you do have a lot more access and personalized relationships
Mm-hmm.
the way we do things.
So, what is next for Kallista, and what's next for Alex within this industry?
So what's next for Kallista is, I think, really getting through the next 3 years of product launches. We've invested in a lot of people, a lot of resources to do something the industry really hasn't seen. If you look at a company our size, and that is to push 10 to 12 collections out within a 36-year time span,
That's a lot.
36 months, sorry.
Yeah.
And I think seeing that come to life and seeing the market react to that, as we are taking our approach of redefining what good kitchen and bathroom design looks like, that's really most exciting for the brand right now,
Mm-hmm.
as well as I think building your global plan and your global penetration at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be busy the next 3 to 5 years. It'll be a lot of hard work. It'll be a very fun ride as well, as you can think about now putting the brand into designer hands in Dubai, in
Mm-hmm.
Shanghai, in London, in Berlin, hopefully. And what's next for Alex is, I think, Alex really being the driver and hopefully the owner behind it, right? And one thing I pride myself with is that I think I was able to give Kallista a face behind the brand again. Somebody that right takes this on as full ownership, not
Mm-hmm.
just a managing director job. Like I treat it as I own the brand. So I act in its best interest for the long term. I'm not chasing short term goals. I love it to the bottom of my heart, right? The way I look at it, what it means to me at the end of the day. And if you think about most of our competition, they are still the smaller brands, they're privately owned.
Right.
They're privately owned by entrepreneurs and founders that put 30 to 40 years of their life into that business.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have that same mentality and that same ownership level if we want to compete against those smaller family type run businesses. So I think that's really what next to me is. I think being at the forefront of shaping Kallista in that way, and then
Mm-hmm.
leaving that legacy behind. And that's at least the next couple of years out. Long term, we'll see where the journey goes, right? I can say Kohler is as much of an exciting brand as Kallista is. Obviously, Kohler with 40,000 employees is a very large global powerhouse. I would certainly love to get my hands on that brand at some point, and there's certainly opportunity out there in the future.
So tell me about the very first time you went on a site visit installation and saw the product installed that you were part of.
Yeah, that was, I remember that was my starting at Kallista was a little bit more challenging because we were still right in the thick of COVID. So travel was still severely restricted. So it took a couple months, actually. I think it took 4 or 5 months till travel started to lighten up a little bit. And I went to the market, I remember, in that fall, and also saw it right at the beginning in the Kohler Village, installed in a separate space. So I think seeing it in person, engaging with the product the first time was amazing to see, because like you could feel the quality, right? You could feel that level of detail. When I saw a couple of our custom stone inlays installed in a house, we've done a couple of show houses in Los Angeles where you don't really get to appreciate it until you actually use it.
True.
That product, you get to see it. Yes, you see it on a shelf, you see it in images, but actually using the product is what makes you appreciate it the most. So the first couple months in market, I think have certainly taught me that. They've started creating that passion. And like I said earlier, I developed, I think, a different eye for design, specifically in the transitional and traditional design aesthetic, right? The level of detail that we bring to some of our collections, like Center Park West, like Pinna Paletta, that machining that takes a couple of dozen hours to complete. That was really special, because I've never really saw or had the level of appreciation for that as I came from that minimalistic design aesthetic that I loved so much.
Well, Alex, it's been a pleasure to have you on our show. Is there anything else you'd like to add and share?
No, I said, this was a great conversation. Appreciate you guys giving the time to talk a little bit myself about Kallista. We're certainly very, very excited for the future. And we're hoping to do this again 12 months from now, 24 months from now, to do a check-in.
Hey, why not? We got the time. We'll always love to have you back on the show. Well, much continued success to you and to Kallista. And thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Cray. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Design. Subscribe for more inspiring conversations to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes content. See you next time.
Hi, you're listening to a Pod for Good Media Network podcast. We are a network that provides podcasting production services and a supportive community in which podcasters can thrive. If you're a podcaster local in the Tulsa area, we would love to have your show on the network. If you are interested in starting one, we would love to help you get started. Find us online at podforgoodmedia.com and fill out our Pod With Us form. Happy podcasting.